Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Over the next 3 days, I'd like to speak about Grhastha life in Krishna consciousness. Now, probably all the brahmacharis will want to run away now, but they can also listen, no harm to hear, because most people in this world are married, and as preachers, we should have some understanding of their particular situation and their different problems and all these things. Now, you may be surprised that why should I as a sannyasi speak about these things? Especially because I wrote a book on brahmacharya and Krishna consciousness. It might be expected that I'm some kind of fanatic. But of course, I'm preaching, and as most of the people in the world are married, I have to preach considering their situation, which has made me think a lot about the problems of married people and how they can practice Krishna consciousness. Now, it's a fact that sannyasis, they don't usually speak very much about family life, except to condemn it, that it's just entanglement, maya. But, of course, householders, they should also hear that. I'm sure they hear plenty of it. But also for their day-to-day life, they're going on in householder life, so they should know how to practice Krishna consciousness within that situation. Now, in traditional Vedic culture, householders' problems and advice for them, that would be given by elderly members of the family, and by householder, brahmanas especially, they would give advice. But the situation today is a little different. Especially in Russia, there are very few senior householder devotees. Our movement is very new. Our movement is very new here. And even in other countries where our movement's been going on for almost 30 years, still we don't have that much depth of traditional wisdom. Preaching Krishna consciousness in the modern world means introducing a new kind of culture, and it's not so easy. The basic principles of Krishna consciousness are very pleasant and easy to follow, but the basic condition of modern life is not conducive to Krishna consciousness. So householder life, even in the best of situations, has its own particular problems. But especially when people are trying to practice Krishna consciousness in a society which is completely against, the whole current of it is against Krishna consciousness, then it becomes more difficult. Probably the brahmacharis are not even aware of this at all, because they live a very sheltered life within the ashram, and they tend not to interact with others so much, But for grihastas who are living in society, they have one foot in the outside world, for want of a better term, and one foot in Krishna consciousness, then they have their particular problems. So Srila Prabhupada, he personally gave a lot of instructions on householder life, and as he pointed out, he was the first bona fide sannyasi to even arrange his own disciples' marriages, because he wanted to see that his disciples were in the ashram that was best for their advancement. So he personally gave a lot of advice. Of course, he had spent so many years in householder life himself, which I haven't, at least in this lifetime. But still, the sannyasi is supposed to be the guru or the guide for all varnas and ashrams, and definitely grihastas need some kind of guidance. In our movement, there's a lot of preaching about renunciation, which is good, because spiritual life means that one should become detached from this material world. But most of our devotees, or those who are married, those who are grihastas, they also need guidance. They need guidance on how to make advancement in a situation which is not specifically meant for renunciation. So you may ask again, what is my qualification to speak about this? Well, one is that I've carefully studied all of Srila Prabhupada's instructions about this. And I've also lived many years in India where the Vedic culture is still to some extent intact, and especially the family unit to a large extent is still intact. And spent so many times I've stayed in the houses of Grihastas, so I've seen at first hand how they are living more or less according to the principles which Prabhupada describes in his books. So I thought a lot about this also. Our movement, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is meant to change the world. It's meant to bring in a cultural revolution in which people can base their lives on Krishna consciousness. They can live peacefully in this life and make advancement towards the ultimate goal of life. But one thing we have to understand is that if we are to have a wide influence on the world, it's not that everybody is going to join our temple as a brahmachari or a brahmacharini. Most of the people in this world are married. Most are not inclined for or suitable for a life of strict renunciation as brahmacharis. So if our movement is to be more than simply a monastic movement, a movement of monks, if it's actually going to have a wide influence in society, then we have to give guidance to people how to live at home with their family in Krishna consciousness. So this is a very important point for our brahmacharis to understand. Okay. Sometimes some brahmacharis who have neophyte mentality, they have a very critical attitude towards grihastas. They think these people are useless. They're not renounced like me. They don't get up at 3:30 in the morning and take a cold bath like me. They're attached to their wife and children. They're completely useless. Better not even look at them. But this is an absolutely ridiculous attitude, because the same brahmacharis are going out and distributing books, and the idea of distributing books is that people will become devotees of Krishna. So when people come forward and take an interest in Krishna consciousness, we should welcome them. Because they're not exactly like you doesn't mean they're not devotees. If they're interested to make progress from a life of meat-eating, illicit sex, gambling and intoxication to one in which they can start to practice Krishna consciousness, we should welcome that. If someone comes up to us and says, I'm interested in Krishna consciousness, what do we say to them? Do we tell them that unless you immediately give up everything and leave your home and your wife and shave your head and move in the temple, then you're just a complete demon? Of course we don't say that. We encourage people to gradually understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and to practice it in their lives. And we've seen in many countries that Grihastha devotees, they can actually contribute so much to our preaching efforts. They can, many times, they can do things which we can't do, which devotees who are living in the temple, they may not be able to do. Especially if they have some good position in society, they can meet so many important people. In some of our centers, the devotees living in the temples, they don't organize any of the big festivals. The congregational members do all the work. In centers like London or Durban, the devotees living in the temple, they don't hardly have to worry about the Janmashtami or Rath Yatra festivals, because so much of the work, all the arrangements, collection, organization is done by Grihastha devotees, congregational members. So really, we shouldn't condemn devotees because of the situation of household life, they can't come up to what we consider to be the ideal standard. But rather we should encourage them to engage in service as much as they can according to their capacity, and be mature and understanding enough to give them guidance by which they can gradually advance within their situation. Those brahmacharis who have this attitude that all these grihastas, they're all useless, usually they're so harsh and strong because they have some envy in their heart. It may be they're thinking that, these people are enjoying sense gratification, I can't. Deep in their heart they may have such envious feelings. So usually those who have such fanatical feelings, actually then they make some offense towards other people who are trying to be devotees in the best way they can. And usually your most fanatical brahmacharis, after some time they all get married anyway. So apart from that, we should understand clearly the philosophy that it doesn't mean necessarily that because one is married, he's less advanced than one who isn't. Many of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dearest devotees were Grihastas, such as Shivananda Sen, Ramananda Rai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was married twice. Married twice means he didn't divorce, but his first wife passed away. And of course, our own Srila Prabhupada spent many years in the Grihastha ashram. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur spent almost all his life in the Grihastha ashram. He had 13 children, one of whom was the incomparable Acharya, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. And he wrote so many books, he did so much preaching, he wrote so many songs. So this is proof that you can be a pure devotee in the Grihastha ashram. Not only a pure devotee, you can be a great Acharya. Apart from, of course, we don't expect that all Grihastas are going to be great Acharyas. Although Prabhupada said that our Grihastas, they should be Paramahamsas. The white color of Grihastha men, that color is also used by Paramahamsas. Brahmacharis, Vanaprasthas, Sannyasis, they wear saffron cloth. And Grihastha men, and also Paramahamsa Babajis, they wear white cloth. So Prabhupada said our Grihastas, they're wearing the Paramahamsa color, they should all be Paramahamsas. So, having said all this about Grihastha life, who should get married? Well, having said all this, I'll tell all the brahmacharis, don't get married. Because actually family life is one big headache. If you can stay brahmachari, much better. You don't have to worry about anything. No need how to bring money, how to get the children educated, how to have enough time to chant your rounds in between working so hard. Brahmachari, all he has to do is serve Guru and Krishna and go back to Godhead. Very nice life. Best. So, if you're a brahmachari, stay brahmachari. So, apart from brahmacharis, more than 50% of the population in most countries are female. So, the general recommendation is that all women should be married. So, as Prabhupada told some of his leaders once, that all the brahmacharis, they should remain brahmachari and all the women should get married. So then a devotee asked Prabhupada, how is that possible, Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, that is your management. You worry about that. Anyway, realistically speaking, most brahmacharis do get married. Fortunately or unfortunately, most of them get married. Still, we recommend, if you can stay brahmachari, better. If your mind is not too much agitated by desires for sense gratification, everyone's mind will be agitated. Especially in the modern age, there is so much cause for agitation. But still, the brahmachari can remain strong by being very strict in his spiritual practices and being very careful to keep himself in situations where he doesn't have to experience unnecessary agitation. But if one feels more inclined towards householder life, or he's having too much disturbance of his mind, he can't tolerate the austerities of brahmachari life, then it may be better for him to get married. Sometimes one reason brahmacharis don't get married for some time is because they're afraid that all the other brahmacharis will make fun of them. Actually, this doesn't happen much in countries where our movement is well established now. But our movement's still quite new in Russia. And anyway, Russian people tend to be a little fanatical anyway. But little bit understanding should be there. That if someone wants to get married, of course we'll preach better you don't, but if their mind is inclined that way, better we just accept the fact. No need to persecute those who want to get married. At the same time, we recommend all those who are brahmacharis, at least, even if you want to get married, stay brahmachari for some time. Practice brahmachari life for some time, and that will help you to become strong. If you spend a few years as a serious brahmachari, then that will give you a good training. Too many of our devotees, they, in an immature stage, they get married and then they have a lot of spiritual difficulties. So it's better to spend a few years in the brahmachari ashram, serve in a renounced way, study very carefully, and become a little mature in Krishna consciousness. It's not that it's not very good just to join this movement and then very shortly after get married. That's not good at all. Also, marriage should not be rushed into out of lust. Of course, those who are too much agitated by lust, they also have to get married. But marriage should be entered into very carefully, in a very mature manner. For devotees who are less than 30 years old, this is good general advice, that if by the age of 30 you haven't decided whether to stay brahmachari or get married, then at the age of 30 it's good to decide, make a decision. Because if you are going to get married, it's better not to leave it very late. But anyway, what you decide, that should be very maturely decided. It's understood that brahmachari life, if you can remain in brahmachari life, that is better. Better in the sense that you can completely concentrate on only spiritual activity. But then, it may not be better if within the brahmachari ashram your mind is too much agitated. So everyone should consider very carefully and make a mature decision. Consider carefully means you should discuss with other devotees also. One point is that we see, especially here in Russia, we see quite a lot of unmarried men who are devotees who are living outside the temple. Living outside means they are not fully committed to the activities of the temple. They maintain some independence, but still they come and join the activities of the temple. So this is a very nice arrangement in their opinion, that I don't have to fully surrender to the temple authorities or the temple way of life. That's too much. I'm not really ready for that. Too much is Russian also? Yeah. Let's come into Russian. Huh? Yeah. So I'll practice Krishna consciousness and I'll do service, but at my own level. So they're not surrendered brahmacharis, although sometimes they dress up in saffron clothes. I don't know why, because saffron means surrender and renunciation. It doesn't just mean that you're not married. There's more to it than that. So actually these kind of semi-brahmacharis or demi-brahmacharis, they should either dedicate them fully to the Guru's mission, to the Sankirtan mission, or they should get married. Because human life is meant for responsibility. Either you should take the responsibility of being very serious about spiritual life and completely dedicating your life directly to the Sankirtan movement, or you should take the responsibility for some of the many unmarried women who are coming to this movement. You should take the responsibility to look after one of the many unmarried women who are coming to this movement. Otherwise you're trying to enjoy the best of material life and the best of... you're trying to avoid the difficulties of brahmachari life and trying to avoid the difficulty of married life. The difficulty of brahmachari life is having to live in austere conditions and you have to rise up early in the morning and you have to work under the authority of the temple president. And the difficulty of married life is you have to work, bring money, that's also austere. So let me avoid the difficulties of brahmachari life, let me avoid the difficulties of Grhastha life. So we may think this is very intelligent, but you can't make very good spiritual advancement in this position. You should commit this way or that way, but take some responsibility. Okay, my time is finished. We can continue tomorrow. Hare Krishna. I don't want to take any questions because there's unlimited questions. And I'd like to finish talking about all these subjects. And then we'll take questions after the seminars, which is after another